This conference will now be recorded.
What's up? Regular call meeting at 6:02 p.m., February the 4th, 2021. Item number 1, call to order. Carmen Serena, present. Ivan Sandoval. Present. Maribel Diaz.
Present.
Esmeralda Solis.
Present.
Rick Loya. Absent. Cesar Rodriguez. Absent. Rodolfo Arriaga. Absent. Okay, we do have a quorum. Item 1B, public comments. Mr. Fine. Item number 2, minutes. Item A, approval of minutes for November 9th, 2020, AGUA SUD board meeting. So moved. I have a motion by Sandoval. I need a second.
Second.
By Esmeralda Solis. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 2B, approval of minutes for December 7th, 2020, AGUA board meeting. So moved. Motion by Sandoval.
Second.
Second by Esmeralda Solis. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Presentation of item number 3, presentation of Performance Service Inc. and AGUA SUD smart meter program.
Yes, Mr. President, we're at that time where we were going to start comparing the past and the present in regards to our smart meter project. We have PSI in regards to making their findings. It will probably be a follow-up presentation. They're still doing some meter verifications and testing. We felt that we need to at least get you started on knowing where they're at now. If you have any questions, in the next meeting they can follow up and try anything and finalize what their results are. So I think we have David Simon on.
David is on.
Good afternoon. If we could go ahead and go to the next slide, that would be great. As Mr. Sines pointed out, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's
That you, Cesar?
Yes, that's me. I'm here at 6:04.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. Continue, sir.
Oh, no problem at all. Thanks. As Mr. Sines pointed out, we are still in the process of actually measuring the savings associated with this project. But we have got started. We're making good progress on that. So this is an update on kind of where we are, how the project is performing. The project was completed in May of last year. We began the project in January 2019. It was done in 2 different phases. It was done as an energy savings performance contract under using local government code chapter 302. Now, some of you may or may not be familiar with the scope of work, so we'll just do a quick review of that. The vast majority of the project is water meters with AMI, AMI being advanced metering infrastructure. That's a fixed base network so that water meters can communicate independently, so you have meter readers going out and actually reading the meters either physically or doing a drive-by. So that project involved installing a little over 15,500 meters and the Census FlexNet AMI system. Again, that was installed in 2 phases. Most of those were installed in 2019. The solar voltaics were part of phase 2. Those were installed in 2020. They were installed at 2 locations, the Abrams plant, the Sullivan plants. 200 kW system at the Abrams plant, the 75 at the Sullivan plant. LED lighting was also installed in a couple different phases. A little less than 700 retrofits or new fixtures installed. Again, when it comes to energy, that's the small portion of the project. Next slide. As we talked about, this is a guaranteed savings project, and this is the annual savings guarantee put in terms of dollars. Now we'll get into the basis of the guarantee, whether that's efficiency or increased accuracy and so on. This is what things equate to in terms of dollars. So I'll just kind of walk through this chart or this table. The second column is increased revenue, and that's by far the largest portion of this project, and that's from the water meter replacement. What we're looking at there is some of the meters, and we'll get into in just a second, we're not very efficient or effective in measuring accuracy, or accurately, I'll give this out, accurately measuring the water passing through them. Savings, and that was $752,000 that we're guaranteeing there. Energy savings is coming from both energy production from the solar, as well as lighting savings, energy reduction in kWh from the LED lighting, about $41,000 there. Operational savings being a little over $134,000, and capital cost avoidance being $288,000. Total of $1.2 million of savings. Next slide. Now, the largest portion of this is the water meters with AMI. As I kind of alluded to, we went out and actually during what we call the investment grade audit phase, when we're really kind of digging in, looking and testing your meters, a statistically valid sample to determine if there's a really good opportunity here. We did go measure those meters. We found that about 7.3% loss at least through the meters that we tested. So that was water passing through the meters that was not getting built. That equates to over $752,000, and that's what we're guaranteeing, is the improved accuracy of the meters. So by installing new solid state meters, we're guaranteeing that those meters are going to be accurate within to 100% plus or minus 1.5%. Now, the great news is so far we've tested about 42% of the meters, maybe a little higher as of today, but by the time the data we got, we're at 42% tested. And they're at 99.9% accurate overall in the accuracy of the meters that we've installed. They've been installed now for over a year. Some of the meters were down to about 0.5% off, but overall we're at about 99.9% accurate. So the remaining portion of the guarantee goes back to the operational and capital cost avoidance, which we previously talked about. Next slide. On the solar, we have not measured the efficiency guarantee yet, but we will be measuring the efficiency guarantee or measure the efficiency of the solar to make sure it does meet the guarantee. The good news, what we'll get to in just a second, we're very confident that that is actually happening. For LED lighting, again, very small portion of the project when it comes to energy savings. That's simply looking at the power reduction in the higher efficiency LED lights versus the old HID lighting, incandescent lighting, and fluorescent lighting. Next slide. Now, how are we doing? Well, as mentioned earlier, when it comes to water meters in the AMI, we are exceeding the guarantee based on the preliminary results, significantly exceeding. And that is, we also have looked at what we got with Juan and asked him to look at water revenue and see how if that's being recognized at AGUA SUD, and that seems to be very consistent with our projection. We'll get into that in just a little more detail shortly. On the solar PV side, we are looking primarily at the Abrams plant because right now there is some communications issues at the Sullivan plant that are currently being fixed. But the Abrams plant, we're producing about 22.5% more energy than we're guaranteeing. That site has actually been up and running now for the last year. LED lighting, there again, small portion of the savings, but the guarantee is being met. Next slide. This is what it looks like in terms of dollars, basically summarizing things and putting in terms of dollars. Again, this is preliminary based on the measurements that we've taken so far, but based on the preliminary results, water meter AMI, again, the largest portion of this project, we're exceeding the guarantee by over $100,000, coming in at around $868,000 per year. Solar PV, that again, significantly better. we're coming in around 25,000 versus basically 19,000. And the LED lighting is staying on par. Again, that's basically a $15,000 in energy savings item. Total benefit, nearly $910,000 per year. That's excluding operational savings and also capital cost avoidance. Now we're a good portion of the good part way through. Is there any questions so far, or should we continue on?
Questions? Go ahead.
Go ahead and continue, Dave, and we'll go till the end.
Great, thank you. Next slide. I want to give you this gives you a little more background on how we got to the water revenue, because that is the biggest portion of this project. So this table that you see on the left graph actually is the water meter accuracy, the old meters versus the new meters. We tested the 3/4, 1 inch, the 1.5 inch, the 2 inch, the 4 inch, and the 6 inch meters. You can see that the 3/4 inch meters and the 1.5 inch meters were really pretty darn accurate. But what we did find is the 1 inch and the other meters really had some gaps in accuracy, running around that 80% level, roughly. And that's where you're getting, so a lot of this additional revenue will be coming from more the commercial industrial customers, as opposed to the residential customers, although there will be some there as well. Up on the upper right-hand side are the meters that we've tested to date. You can see that accuracies are coming in extremely good on the meters that we've tested. So far, we've tested 58 out of 136 that we're going to be testing. So far, we've tested the 3/4, the 1 inch, and the 2 inch. Next slide. Now, the guarantee itself is a calculated guarantee. And what we've done is we've gone back and looked at your water loss reports, determined what you're billing, taking an average of that billing, and then also an average of what you're producing in water. We actually measured the accuracy of your meters, and then what we've done is we assumed the accuracy of the new meters that we felt comfortable guaranteeing, and then we applied the existing billing rate. So to verify it, and where we are currently is we're out there testing in the field. Meters have been installed now for over a year. And then we basically take those efficiencies, the accuracy of those measurements, and apply that to that same equation calculation that we did before to come up with the guaranteed savings. And that last item, note that these calculations are not being adjusted for growth. I know the area that we're in has been growing. You've added the number of accounts. In this case, last I had looked, it was 903 since we'd really completed the project. So that had not been considered in this calculation. Next slide. And this is messy, and I'm not going to go through this, but I'll just highlight a couple of things here. If you look toward the center of this, there's two charts. There's calculations here. You see numbers in red. The numbers in red are the accuracies that we've actually measured. So it says new meter accuracy on those. And so we were applying those accuracies for the 3/4 inch meter, the 1 inch meter, and the 2 inch meter. The other meters, we've assumed the accuracy that we previously did. So again, these are preliminary calculations. They're not final. And if you look over two columns, you looked at the measured meter accuracy, and that's consistent with the slide we looked at before on the accuracy of the meters. As again, you see, these are the numbers as opposed to the chart graph. You see that the 1 1/2 and 3/4 inch meters are pretty darn accurate to start with. Next slide. We had talked about, and what we didn't want to do is put numbers up here that were any way deceptive or suggesting that we're taking into account for your new accounts water revenue for that. So this is a graph, and again, this goes back to the water revenue, not the calculations per se. But this is the information reported that we've got from Juan on how you're doing on water revenues. Our baseline water revenue, and again, kind of looking at this graph toward the bottom, toward the center, you see a baseline. That was the $7.9 million. In 2020, now I don't have the exact numbers, this goes through, I believe, October and projected through the end of the year, is coming in at $9.2 million. The line in blue is the revenue where you're actually getting that additional revenue in, that $9.25 million. The orange line is the line that takes out the 903 meters that have been installed, saying some of those were installed in 2019, which equates to about a $41,000 benefit that's not related to our project. And in 2020, the rest of the meters, which equates to about $172,000, almost $173,000 benefit, again, not related to our project. So this still gives you a good idea of related to our project. It would still be over, as you can see here, a little over $9 million in additional revenue. Next slide. And this is kind of just another way of looking at that. If you didn't do the project, what would have happened? There would have been the increases, which is in this case, the blue line now, the blue dashed line, is the line that would reflect what would happen if you did not do a project such as this. Replacing the meter, increasing the accuracy of the meter. Yes, you build more water. In 2020, you actually build more water, some new skills that are factored in. You've also had new customers, so the billing would have gone up, but you can still see a significant gap between what this project ended up bringing in and what you would have billed without this project. Next slide. And that's we do have some additional slides here that we can cover if some questions come up, but that's the last slide that I had. Any additional questions?
Questions? No, keep on, Dave.
Oh, that's
As I stated earlier, members, they're still testing some of the other meters sizes, so they would be prepared to finalize another presentation at our next meeting. We just got this today as well because we kind of went over it this morning. I'm going to give you my staff to kind of verify some of the numbers in regards to the revenues and whatnot between now and the next meeting. If you have any questions while you're reassessing and taking time to look at this, we'd be glad to have a little work session with you at a time and come up with a question and answer period at our next presentation and then finalize their actual numbers.
On this one, we're using the old rates, right?
Yes, that's what those are some of the questions I asked because I did tell them we had some rate increases.
Yeah, because they do put here existing rates, but this is supposed to be compared to our old rate. So that's on, if you go to page,
on the top of yeah, it's just 15 heavy rain.
Right.
Yeah, so we got to make sure.
Before we ever increase.
Yes.
You know, it's marginal, but before we ever increase.
Yeah.
So they're going to make sure that it's being done on the rates before
Right.
when the contract was
yes.
actually done and not.
Can you answer that question right now, Dave, or can you get back to this on whether these were based on the rates that were in place when we first contacted you? Or
that is correct.
Based on the 2 increases we had last year and the year before?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't seen the new rate increases, so this does date back to the rates that were previously in, total combined rate of $4.89. So yes, it's based on the old rate.
No.
That's what it said.
Both.
So,
I'm having, sorry, you're having.
Yeah, no, it's not your fault, we're having a hard time, getting all your, listening to you. But we'll still make that confirmation.
When did they get this contract?
The date in the beginning.
2018.
And they were supposed to come back a year later, right?
In 2018 is when it started, and then in 2019, it would have about mid-year of 2019 was supposed to be complete. We got it extended 6 months because they were understanding that there was the water tower that was taken down was still there, and they at their own cost they put in an antenna tower, and that's why they needed a receiver at that area. Because I think we have 3 or 4 receivers, antennas to receive all the information they.
There are 5, I'm sorry, there are 4 antennas total that are receiving data from the meters.
Okay, and so it took a while to get the engineering to get the design to put that new antenna tower by AGUA. Okay, so that took a while. So we extended 6 months, and then they finished, and so we're about 6 months behind on getting this information.
Yeah, that was my question. Why were they a little bit behind on this information? They were supposed to come back a year later.
But, in 2018, when it was contracted, 2019, the first rate increase came in 2010. That was in around June or July. And then in 2020, it was around March. So there have been 2 increases. Because it was a 4-year step increase.
When was the second one again?
2020.
2020?
Yes. And we're scheduled for a 3rd one this year, but these increases were, when we discussed the next item, were planned for over 4 years, and then after 2 years, we would assess to see whether we could keep it the same or make some adjustments. In other words, do another.
Okay, so PSI is saying that we're using the old rates, right? Or we're supposed to be using the old rate, and we're only using like 15,000 some customers, right? That's why we initially started. Okay. All right.
So those are 2 things that we will confirm.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll look forward to getting back with you when we finish this report.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
thank you. Item number 4, presentation by CAPEX Consulting Group on AGUA SUD water rights, rate, and planning.
Yes, Mr. President, we should have Jeff Nolan on the line. And I think he has a presentation.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jeff Snow with CAPEX Consulting, and glad to be of service. I just have a few slides that I wanted to go through. The request of Mr. Fox to share with the board some of the progress we've made, and also to get some direction on next steps with respect to the rates. As you recall, you adopted a 5-year series of rate increases. We've just phased in year 3 of the 5, or they will be phased in this year. And so it's now time to look at those rates, recommendations, and what's changed in the system since you adopted that ordinance, and consider staying with the plan or making a deviation. And it's my job to give you that information, to get your direction of how deep you want to go and to make a decision on whether to continue or to modify. We can go to the first slide, please. Okay. And this is flow data. This is all raw water coming in that you purchase either via lease or pay for delivery, or a combination of both. And as Mr. Sines has made you aware, we went through in 2019 and 2019 primarily, we had a very long renegotiation with our wholesale water suppliers, the irrigation districts. And at the end of 19, we executed new agreements. And as a consequence, in 2020, our total outlay for both leased water and delivered water was about $404,000 less than it was in 2019. So significant savings to our SUD. Is there any questions on that? I also want to point out one other thing on this slide. If you look on the bottom right, the percent of treated water sold, 88% in fiscal 20. That really supports what the gentleman with PSI was saying. 88% of all the treated water was sold through the meter, which is unprecedented in your system history, with an exception of 2017, which was an odd year. So a 12% water loss, and you have to keep in mind, we're talking about all water into the system. So you've got line flushing activities, some fire prevention. You have quite a bit of things that you use water for besides selling through the meter. And the 12% unaccounted for water amount, not including flushing and other activities, is I've only got one other client that's ever gotten their system down that tight, that low. So you're heading in the right direction. The meters, from the numbers I've done, seem to be really delivering more accurate sales. If there's no questions, I will move to the next slide. Okay, history of account growth. You're adding roughly 246 accounts a year on an average, and that's over a 10-year average. It's important to mention that from 19 to 20 was a big year. You actually grew by 2.4% from 19 to 20. And I suspect that might have something to do with the fact that you put the new meters in, and you may have caught some unmetered customers. I'm not sure, but 2.4% was an outlier growth. I'm sorry, what was that?
No,
we're good, Jeff.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. With no questions, what I want to add to this slide, which I didn't incorporate in the slide, but as you're aware, board, we've acquired water rights pretty aggressively over the last 2 years. And so based on this 1.6% growth, I did a calculation. How far will your current inventory of water rights carry you based on a 1.6% growth in your system? And I'm showing that you will be good currently through 2047 with the water rights that you own. These are water rights that you've bought for and own outright, as opposed to having to lease and being subject to any risk. So that makes you, that level of inventory and water rights makes you also a unique system. Where other systems they're really looking for more water rights, so they might have to consider growth moratoriums. You're covered through 2047 if you grow at 1.6% a year as you've done. So that's a healthy sign that for your continued growth and your prospects. If there's no questions on this slide, I'm going to move on to slide 4, which is my final slide. I'm going to go quickly tonight. Now, slide 4 is very busy. Yes, what I want to point out here, if you will look on there's 2 highlighted columns. There's average production per account. And you can see in 2020, there's 10,400 gallons produced, and that's what you treated and distributed to the system. And out of that 10,400 gallons, that's for all customers, residential, non-residential, all of them. 9,400 gallons per account was actually sold through the meter. So you're able to generate more revenue for all your customers. And in doing so, you're able to tamp down and really keep your rates at a reasonable level, which we adopted what I consider to be a very modest series of rate increases. So how modest, if you look to the next column, this is for water only, but your average revenue per account, if a customer were to contact you and say, my rates have really increased, or what you can tell them is, on average, In 2016, you collected $45 per water account system-wide. In 2020, you collected $46. That was through a combination of increased rates and then people conserving, but also installing the new meters. So very modest increase system-wide. And you can see that we have the numbers in a per 1,000 gallon basis also. So as I mentioned when I began, you adopted a 5-year series of rate increases. Year 3 is scheduled for implementation in the next month or two. And from there, we'll be able to look at those revenues, which right now your water revenues are very much on target to the forecast I made back in 2017. We're right on target. But because you've done a few things to cut expenses, you put in the new meters, you've refunded debt, and then you've renegotiated your wholesale water supply and delivery agreements. All those could put you in a position to revisit the last 2 years of the rate increases if you wanted to do that. However, I need to also add that there's always demands on the system that require funding. So I'm not suggesting that you bypass the rate increase. I'm just telling you that the system has performed better than expected when it comes to trimming expenses since I did the study in 2017. I'm glad to answer any additional questions that y'all have, and thank y'all again for letting me be of service to Iowa SUD.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Any questions? Eddie?
As I mentioned earlier, it was voted on to go ahead and go through this phase increase per year, and that after the second year we will reset, and and Jeff has already explained where we're at. And I guess I need to ask Jeff is, in order to get a firm grip on whether we make this next increase, I think it was a quarter, right? Quarter increase for the monthly base. What would it take, to get that done, and how long would it take you to get it done to make a full assessment of it? Yeah.
Mr. Sines, I've got the water part in the model. I need to get the wastewater part in and then work through Juan's financials. So if I could have 3 weeks to prepare those numbers, I think that would be adequate, if that's okay.
Do you think you could have something to present at the next meeting, March 3rd?
Yes, sir, I sure could.
Or if the board chooses, you could have that presentation and make that decision.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Before we implement. Yeah, fine. Okay. All right, Jeff. Well, we'll get you those numbers. We'll talk tomorrow, and make sure you get them so you can have enough time to finalize them.
Okay, that'd be great. And thank you all again for letting me help.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Item number 5, discussion possible action regarding FM 492 water recovery and waste process improvement project, Water Saver. Mr. Science or Middle?
Okay, we took bids on this project, and Middle will come up with the numbers. We're at a point where we either make that jump to go ahead and fund them. There were, somewhat above budget, but, talking to Mr. Salinas, he feels there might be some cost savings that we can do in regards to bringing it down to something that we can afford and not use all of the budget money that we have, because we still have to budget for the Liberty Road utility improvement, number 1. Number 2, just this week, it seems like I'll fall into place. There are 2 TechDOT projects that are in road widening that are also going to require us to relocate lines there. We all know that Veterans is one of them, from Abram all the way to Homa. What, 2.5 miles? About 2.5 miles. And we received a letter from TechDOT, or their engineer, saying that they would like improvements to be fall into our next budget year, but obviously you're kind of under a gun to determine how much you might take to get that done. Relocate 2.5 miles water line, if they're in the way. And then another one is the short section on mile 7. And Dolphin, because they're extending an extra mile, I believe, of road, from there for their stop. But that's more minor than this one. I believe that we can do this, and Diego and I have discussed, and I talked to Mr. Pettis as well, if we can get this done, but I would like to make sure that we just do the basics in regards to this contract, and then go back and discuss and see some of the scope of it, to get it within the budget. Because I believe you all have visited, it's something that's necessary, and we would like to get it.
It is.
So, at the end of the day, we're going to make a recommendation to approve, but I'd like to Mr.
Yeah, so on this project, we received 2 bids, approximately 60 days ago. The low bid was the Morwell. They were approximately $642,000. On this project, the main objective was to replace the equipment at the water savers. While we were doing the design for that, the operator, Mr. Castillo, had requested that, the blowers that you guys went out and saw on one of the days that we walked the 492 plant.
Yes.
So we included to replace those 2 blowers, some air piping and some valves in the rapid mix. So with that equipment, it added approximately $75,000. And we feel that if we get into negotiations with the contractor, that maybe we can postpone some of that scope of work for another time. We redid our cost estimate for the Liberty Road water line relocation. We feel like there's some way to save there as well, so that we can not knock out more projects that are pending.
And that will be doing it by in-house or?
Yeah, so on Liberty, one of the things that we're looking at with Mr. Albert Alonso is there's some crossings that we're proposing to have just steel casing and not necessarily put the water line in there, but have the casing in there so that when they widen the road and as the area develops, because a lot of that area on the east side of the future extension of Liberty, there's no development on that side. So you want to take advantage of that whenever it develops, that they install those water lines. But at the same time, you already have a steel casing and not have to bore across, which is pretty expensive. So that's what we're proposing, to try and have some steel casings, and I think that that's an item that we can save on by doing it in-house, especially since there's no road north of the canal up to mile 3. There's a section where there's no road, and I think that there's no traffic. They can open, they can make the trench wide enough to where they don't need trench detection if they make it in steps. That could possibly be something that could be done in-house.
Basically, if we're at the end of the day, with the budget that we still have on our existing loans for all these projects, the water saver kind of came in, we kind of squeezed it in, but our bids have been coming in low, and we feel that we can squeeze this one in. So we're recommending approval to get it done, and and then we can take what we can.
And I know that I don't want to kind of jump the gun, but I know that the next item, pertains to some of the water savers, but there's also a water saver that needs to be done here at the Abrams site. So that's something to also consider. The plan right now, that one hasn't been designed or anything like that. So, to try and get funding for it, I think it's a good idea.
Where is that Liberty Street?
Liberty Road is
The north-south street east of Walmart.
the road where
Jeff Casey?
Denny's and Expressway.
Oh, that's where it's gonna, for the overpass or what?
So Liberty, from right there from Denny's, going north, there's the school, I can't remember the name of the school. On JFK on Diamond. So that road is going to be widened into a 4-lane road with a turning lane in the middle. And it's gonna get extended all the way to Mountain. So that's a project that the county and Texas. have already designed, and, I know that they have it in the works to, get into construction eventually, and so we have to relocate. The minimal lines on this one compared to mile 3, but there's some improvement that needs to be done.
So, county's gonna be working on part of it, no?
Yeah, the county's building the road. Well, they got it, they did the design, they hired the engineers to do the design. And so LNG is the engineer, the project engineer on that project, for the design. I believe they've already hired, not on that one, on mile 3 they did. On Liberty, LNG was a project engineer. I don't think they have a construction engineer. But it is in the works. We've been coordinated with LNG, and they were going to start at the beginning of this year, but now it's saying summer, and sometimes the schedule changes.
So we still got time, right? For this?
Yes, we're not gonna recommend going out for bids on this one until we know it's gonna get built.
Okay.
There's no reason for us to put that on and you wait a year or something, and then you spend.
Yes, correct.
We'd rather keep it,
Okay.
The status on that is the plan.
The plans are showing ready.
We're 90% complete with the plan. It'll be ready for when the time comes.
Okay.
Okay.
So recommending approval on this, Mr. Science?
Yes.
So move.
Motion by Sandoval, need a second?
Second.
Second by Maribel Diaz. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, discussion possible action on approval of a resolution allowing M2 Engineering to submit a SFY 2022 drinking water state revolving fund intended for use to plan to Texas Water Development Board for FM 492 water recovery and waste process improvement project, water saver. Hello.
President, members of the board, this is, and I still think we need to submit, but we were, just in case it was rejected as far as the bid was concerned, we wanted to get approval to submit to the water and run board for an application to see if it's funded. There's still a portion of it that might still need to get funded, so we're also looking at the AGRUM water saver, so I'd like to kind of modify this and request that you do the FM 492 and AGRUM plan, water recovery. Because we do have one over there.
Yes, and the intended use plan, that's it's a yearly application that's due with the first week of March. These are due on March the 3rd, and usually municipalities or water districts, you submit projects that you're planning to do in the future. For instance, on this one, it's for 2022. You submit in March, they get ranked by the Texas Water Development Board. The ranking gets published around June and summer, and depending on how you rank, and if it's a disadvantaged community, then you can rank, 30% loan forgiveness, 50% loan forgiveness, up to 70% loan forgiveness. So it just depends on how you rank with the rest of the state. So this doesn't mean that you're getting a loan or a grant right now. This just means that you submit a short application, you get ranked, and depending on how you rank, then you can make a decision on whether you apply for that loan with the Texas Water Development Board. That's what basically to get an invitation.
Do we have how much it's gonna cost?
Yes, we do have a budget. Can't remember on AGRUM, it's a little more than 492. I want to say it's around approximately around the $650,000 range. The other one was going to be about 550, but since we added the blowers and the air piping, it added.
Sorry, I was asking on the cost. Is there any cost for you to submit the forms?
No, on those forms,
we can already include it
within our.
Okay.
As far as his normal.
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't
You make him do more
explain.
Unless you want to.
Any questions? Yeah, it's recommended approval. Yeah, it's recommended for approval. but, you gotta make a motion. Mr. Science, you were wanting, the motion also to
Yes,
include?
I'm asking that it
the
can
Abram plan.
incorporate, instead of just SM 492, add Abram.
You gotta make a motion and include.
Okay, I make a motion to include, I know it already has 492, but also add Abram Road.
Abram plan.
Abram plan.
Okay, so you're making a motion to approve the item as amended to include the Abram Road?
Abram plan.
Abram plan.
Yes, sir.
You understand?
Okay, all right.
Okay, that's your motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion by Sandoval, need a second?
Second.
Second by Maribel, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, discussion possible action on approval of a resolution accepting all project infrastructure and officially closing construction project with Jimmy Klossner and Sons Construction, Inc. for AGUA Special Palmview wastewater collection system phase 3, lift stations A2, F, G, and G7.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, out of the 4 projects that we have with the Water Development Board, this was the 3rd phase. And this one, if you approve it today, puts it to closure. It was, one that, we just needed to get all the final paperwork. SMB left and he took over and he put all of this together, but a lot of the work was done before they left. But obviously, this is a milestone to at least get one of these 4 phases done that we have with the water development.
Yes, SMB had already completed the majority of the paperwork. The only thing we really did was, compile everything together, coordinate with Mr. Santana, with the Water Development Board, and part of the closing out documents is that you guys have this item, on the agenda.
On this one, how about the liquidated damages? Do we have any fees?
All we're doing is asking to get closed out. Yeah. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about that in the next session. Forgive me.
Because we're giving completion.
We're just asking having the Water Development Board that we're done.
Okay, can we take this to executive? Just discuss that and we'll bring it out and we'll move on from there. Okay? So I recommend to take this item 7 to executive session.
I have a motion by Sandoval, need a second?
Second.
By Esmeralda Solis, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And Mr. Chapman is available today, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Item number 8, discussion possible action on KM International LLC service contract.
Further, I recommend that we take that one into.
So we do have it on item 11B.
Okay, so recommendation to take it, item 8 also to executive session.
Okay, I have a motion by Sandoval, need a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Second.
Second by Esmeralda Solis, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, discussion, consideration, possible action regarding proposed contract for professional legal services. On this one, I did reach out to Mr. Javier Peña, and he's here to give a presentation to us.
Yes, I know most of the board. My name is Javier Peña. I've been an attorney since 1999. My area of practice is general civil litigation with a focus on business litigation and governmental litigation. You hired me previously for a limited project. I propose to go ahead and continue. It's essentially the same contract. It's an hourly contract as needed, no retainer. There are a couple of issues that Matt brought up to me, a couple of changes that he recommends. I've agreed to go ahead and make those changes. First is no retainer, no interest on those payments are the main things. I agreed to remove those, and I would ask the board to consider the contract with those, we do need to make those changes.
Any questions?
So no retainer at all?
No retainer.
No retainer, good.
Yeah, so it's an hourly contract, similar with my firm. You could decide to not use the Peñitas services at any time.
Okay.
There's only responsibility paid for work that has been done and expenses incurred in the past. There's no, nothing going forward. It's also, we've made it on an assignment basis. So in other words, he could be on retainer, but the district doesn't have any, additional needs, for his particular services, and so he's not doing any work. But then something comes up, and the board would, ask him to do some work on the project,
Okay.
and he's on call.
Yeah, he's on call.
Also, there is no, like I said, it's on per project basis, hourly. There's no 30-day out, 60-day out. As soon as you all aren't happy with my work, you all can inform me, and then my work stops.
Okay, so you said, that you are willing to take away the additional fees charge, anything, right?
Yes.
Take those away? Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, and just so the board knows, that there was just some language in there that mentioned a retainer. It was probably language from an agreement that would include a retainer, but Mr. Peña didn't include that in there, so we just struck out the word retainer to make sure there's no confusion. And then also a relatively standard provision is the interest rate on unpaid balances. I squeezed it on.
I'm good.
All right.
Anybody else?
Any questions? Any other questions, comments?
I make a motion to approve the professional legal services with the
Amended.
condition of the amendment of no retainer and no interest on any of the
Motion made by Esmeralda Solis. Need a second?
I second the motion.
What that, do you need to name it? Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Go ahead, it's Peña LLC. And then what you can do on the contract, I think you have a copy of it.
Yes.
I will show you the two changes. I will line them out, and then you can initial those two changes. Mr. Peña can initial them as well, and then you can.
Okay.
Okay. So I make a motion to approve the professional legal services by Peña and Bella with the conditions that we remove the no retainer and no interest on any others.
Motion made by Esmeralda Solis. Second by Maribel Diaz. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Peña.
Welcome aboard.
Come on board.
Item number 10, General Manager Report. Item A, Fourth Quarter Investment Report.
Yes, the investment report is attached at the end. Online, you look at it. I don't have anything on the pontoon sewer, but we could reserve anything.
Let me go back to investment
Okay.
report. On Esmer, do you have any questions? I know you're our treasurer.
Yes, well, I know I wasn't here for the full quarter, but I just want, do you recommend everything?
Yes, I've gone over and recommend everything is going at the rate that we have and what we projected, we do recommend it. What I'll do is, we'll sit down before we get it on the next.
Okay.
We can kind of go over and we can give you a short course on how Mr. Peña and I go.
Okay, that would be appreciated.
No, that's definitely, and we should have done it before, but that's fine.
Okay.
My bad.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 10B, Texas Water Development Board, Palmview Sanitary Sewer Improvement. Mr. Science.
We have nothing to discuss. We have something to make it.
Okay. Item 10C, Net Bank Technical Assistance Agreement, sewer hookups. Mr. Salinas.
So, as mentioned every month, right now, the Morwell and their subs are still, trying to get at it. They kind of had slowed down in November and December, but they're back at it with additional crews. Right now, they've completed 629 lines that are installed. Out of the 629 lines that have been installed, 315 have been connected and are flowing to the lift stations, and are being, we provide, the meters weekly to Ms. Pettis so that they can start getting bills on time. Out of those 315 that have been connected, 226 septic tanks have been pumped out, and out of the 226 septic tanks that have been pumped out, 163 have been fully decommissioned, filled with sand.
What was that last number again?
163. Right now, contractors approximately 37% complete, based on the amount of services. Based on time, they should be 55% complete, so they're approximately 20% behind. We are trying to stay on top of them to put the foot on the gas pedal a little bit, but at the same time, we still prefer quality over quantity. I know that the last meeting that we had with the Water Development Board, they said, well, you know, what if the other project's not completed? There's other things that they could do, but we're trying to avoid some of those hassles that we had at Tierra Linda where it's run the line. They're not able to connect because that area is not completed where we can connect to the main. And so we're talking to NAPAC to kind of let them know that, you know, they're at least adding crews and they're not deducting crews. So they're trying to do a little better, but they did slow down during the holidays.
They still have one bore machine out there?
Yes, they have a bore machine. That's one of the things that we've been talking to. I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the owner of Morewell at my office. One of the concerns that we have is that they maintain that bore machine on site a lot more. They have been taking it to other projects, and so that slowed them down as well. So we sent them an email copy to Mr. Science and Pam on several concerns that we had. So we let the contractor know about a week and a half ago with it. We're going to talk about those tomorrow. And he was out there this morning. My inspector told me he was out there this morning, and they're trying to get on the ball a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, because I've been getting those phone calls from the residents.
I have a question. And when you're talking about complete, if there's a connection to a house, and we haven't made the connection and be certified to tank, do you consider that complete or not?
So 100% complete would be the 163.
Okay. All right.
Because those have already been fully decommissioned.
Okay. So you're factoring in all in to only get to 30%?
35%?
Yeah. So it's 35%?
No, we're going based on the 629 because they have other crews that are doing that separately, and so eventually we're hoping that they're going to catch up.
If they catch up, that could easily go up real quick. It's just on the septic tank certification.
Correct. And they have basically one crew decommissioning the tank.
Right.
But 315 homes are already connected where they're being able to.
So that's another way to catch up by getting maybe a second crew to the tank.
Right. Okay. And those are some of the things those are some of the things that we plan to talk to tomorrow.
Okay. My further advice is just be on top of them. That's it. Other than that, it's good. They're a little bit behind, but
you don't want to stay too behind.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, the last conversation that we had with Ms. Mireya always, don't be down if they catch up to you. but we're not letting the contract.
Kind of opposite.
We don't want to say we want to too close.
Yeah.
No.
Phase 2 was short, so we wanted to rush it, and over here trying to slow down.
Maybe somewhere in the middle.
Thank you, Milo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 11, executive session. Pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act and Texas Government Code Section 551.001, consultation with attorney, 551.072 regarding real property, 551.073 constructive gift, 551.074 personal matters, and 551.076 security. Item A, Texas Water Development Board, Palmview Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project. Item B, discussion regarding case number 3353-20-I, S&B Infrastructure versus AGUA Special Utility District in District Court of Hidalgo County, Texas, at 398th Judicial Court. Item C, discussion regarding previously terminated contract for professional legal services. Item D, discussion regarding Chem International LLC service agreement contract. Item E, discussion regarding iPay service contract. Item F, Mandela Water Storage Tank Project. I need a motion.
Item number 7. Item number 7. I mean,
Discussion.
Huh?
hold on. They didn't.
Oh, but it's already here on D.
Yeah, there's already a motion.
Oh.
So maybe-
Yeah.
Don't move.
So, okay. Got a motion by Sandoval at 7:03. I need a second.
Second.
By Esmeralda Solis, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Like, yeah.
Oh, okay. You're good. All right.
So, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I need a motion to come out of executive session at 9:36.
So move.
Motion by Sandoval. I need a second.
Second.
By Esmeralda Solis. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, discussion possible action regarding items discussed in executive session. There's no action. Okay. So I need a motion to come out of executive for number 7.
No, we just need a motion. We're already out. We
Okay.
just gotta, if the board wants to consider 7, a motion has to be made.
Okay. Item number 7, discussion possible action on approval of resolution accepting all project infrastructure and officially closing construction project for Jimmy Klossner and Sons Construction, Inc. for AGUA Special Palmview wastewater collection system, phase 3, lift stations A2, F, G, and G7.
Before we can consider that, there has to be a motion to return to item number 7 for consideration.
I make a motion to return to item number 7.
I have a motion by Esmeralda Solis. In a second?
Second.
Second by Sandoval. On the favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have to reread it? Since I already did it. Any discussion, questions on item number 7?
No? I make a motion to execute a resolution closing out the project, subject to final payment in accordance with the engineer's recommendation.
I have a motion by Esmeralda Solis. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Ivan Sandoval. On the favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13, adjournment at 9:38 p.m.
So move.
Motion by Ivan Sandoval. Need a second.
Second.
Second by Maribel Diaz. On the favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.